Welcome to Ball Up Top, your favorite college hoops game show. Pour one out for the inspiration for the show. By the way, around the horn, sad news this week, but hopefully we can fill the empty spot in your heart, sports fans, for a little points-based sports game show. I've got three of my favorites here with us today: Riley Davis, Eric Fawcett, Jim Root. If you've watched us this season, you know how this works. These three are going to vie for my affection, 1 point at a time. I've got 15 topics. They'll go head to head. The winner of the topic will stay. The loser will go out. The person waiting will come in. At the end of the show, we will crown a winner after a bonus round where the points are worth double. We have a lot to get to today. We're going to kind of preview conference tournaments a little bit, and then all of the best games upcoming this weekend as well will be hit on. Let's see. Today, we're going to start with Eric Fawcett. Fawcett, you get to pick who you'd like to go up against first.
Oh, let's do Riley. I messed him up last time by not being able to start last time we were on together, so I'll do him a solid this time.
Return the favor. There we go. Okay, since Monday, gentlemen, since the last episode of Ball on Top, that's what I'm looking for all five of these answers. Fawcett, give me the best team performance that you've seen since the beginning of the week.
I think Wednesday night, Florida over Alabama on the road. There's a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament on the line, the 2nd seed in the SEC, and it was senior night in Tuscaloosa. And I think for Florida to win and win the way they did, somewhat comfortably, it got to 2 possessions at the end, but really they were leading by double digits in the second half. I think to show that they could beat Auburn, now to show they could beat Alabama on the road, to get a win like that is just a warning shot to the rest of college basketball.
Riley.
Yeah, while Fawcett goes with Todd Golden, I'm going to go with the Golden Tablets. And yes, I am talking about BYU getting the win on the road at Iowa State. They overcame 29 turnovers, a season high. Had a really quiet game from Yegor Daman. It didn't matter. Even when they let Iowa State back in, they got the job done. Career high 13 free throw attempts from Richie Saunders. Made all 13 of them. And how about Kebaketa, one of the best glue guys in the sport with 15 boards, 3 blocks, had just like, it was an absolute monster on the offensive glass. Kept extending those possessions for the Cougs and was just integral to their win.
I think you guys hit the two correct answers. I'm going to give the point to Riley, who made me physically spit at that Golden Tablets answer. I was also impressed how BYU responded because they blew the big lead. And then they still found a way to survive in double overtime. That was wildly impressive to me. Riley, you're on the board. Back to you. What's the best player performance you've seen this week?
Well, I'm going to actually pivot back to that Florida game and give a shout out to Alex Condon, who has just become one of my favorite players in the country. Maybe the best big that no one really talks about. Career high 27 points in this one. Also chipped in 10 boards. Only 1 assist, which is like low-ish for him. But that 1 assist he had, it came to Elijah Martin when he cut back door for a dunk right after Mark Sears hit a big three to cut the lead to 7, I believe, which was the closest Alabama had really got in the second half. Condon was just instrumental in slamming the door shut on the Tide. Also gave Grant Nelson fits. Nelson couldn't do anything against him.
Jim.
I'm going with the Bryce Williams, the 43. Maybe it's low-hanging fruit. Maybe it was a loss. That's fine. He was playing 1-on-5 at times. Some of their offensive possessions against Ohio State were just give it to Bryce and hope for the best. And he's going against a team that had 4 guys score 20. He only had one teammate get near that mark. 3 of their starters were in single digits. He was trying to drag the Huskers to an NCAA tournament berth. Came up short, but I was mega impressed by Williams.
Yeah, it's singular is what it feels like every time you watch Bryce Williams. We've been discussing Big Ten all conference teams this week, and it's hard not to immediately put him on the first team, even though you're not trying to reward the guys on losing teams to kind of pad the stats. There's nothing stat padding about the way Bryce Williams goes about his business. Jim, I think you're right. That performance was insane. You get the point. Jim, biggest disappointment this week?
I threw him out of my tournament last night, Greg, but it's Cincinnati for me. Just home against Kansas State as a touchdown favorite, back against the wall, desperately needing wins to stay in the bubble conversation, and you meekly take an L here. Now, maybe it's impressive because they let Kansas State get into the top 75 of the net, so it went from a Q3 loss to a Q2, but I'm not rewarding them for that. I was disgusted, and this team has vastly underperformed this whole season.
Fawcett.
There's a whole bunch of buzz about how Missouri's for real and they're the big SEC team that no one's talking about. And then they just got raced by Oklahoma, a team that, again, I don't know if Jim's thrown that team out of his tournament, but I hope he does. For Oklahoma to score 96 and Missouri to just have no answers and not be able to adjust. And it just felt like all their big bodied front court players were just scrambled all night long. And that was just one of the concerns that as we look forward. I mean, I do think Missouri could go on a little bit of a run, but a performance like this shows that they could be vulnerable to just about anyone.
Yeah, I'm sure you're breaking Jim's heart. You see the Missouri logo behind him. And there's another Missouri game we're going to talk about later in the show this weekend. But as far as how can I assign blame for disappointing things, I think the team that loses at home to a definitively bad team disappointed me more than the team that was on the road against a lottery pick in Jeremiah Fears, who stepped up. So, Jim, you're going to get the second point here. Back to you. What surprised you most this week?
This is a disappointing surprise. I wish I could say it was positive, but I guess I'm a pessimist right now. Arizona gave up 100 points to five players. Arizona State is down to like legitimately basically five scholarship guys. They're banged up, they're hurt. They kicked BJ Freeman off the team. And yet this Arizona team who's supposed to be a top four seed in the NCAA tournament couldn't keep him out of the paint, couldn't keep him off the free throw line in a big old rivalry game here, their arch rival. I was pretty disgusted and shocked, really, that they gave up triple digits there.
Riley.
Greg, it doesn't feel like it was all that long ago when we were laughing at Pat Kelsey and them boys getting just run off the court by Tennessee, Ole Miss, etc. Fat Edwards did not look like he belonged. And additionally, we were wondering where this fat nickname was coming from, why he was choosing that. Well, it turns out Edwards has been on a tear the last 10 games. He's averaging 20.8 points per game, shooting 49% from three, punctuated that last night with 35 points, hitting 7 threes against Cal. What's crazy is if you go back to those early season stats, first 17 games, 13 points per game, shooting 26.2% from three. He's quietly turned himself into like a true all ACC like contender for one of those teams.
It was icky, but early in the season, Arizona got 100 hung on them as well. It was at the Kohl Center in that weird free throw voodoo game. So I don't know. Maybe I'm digging you just off some math here, Jim, but it's happened before. It wasn't the craziest thing to me. I'm with you, Riley. Different version of that we're seeing right now. And it's one that I believe in for Louisville's March chances. Riley, you get the point. The final prompt goes to you. What's one thing that you loved this week?
I'm going to give some love to Micah Shrewsbury, who had a nice little viral moment yesterday in the postgame after Notre Dame knocked off the once mighty Stanford Cardinal. If you watch this clip, the Notre Dame men's basketball team tweeted it out. There's a lot of sniffing from Coach Shrews, a lot of almost like he's getting choked up, a lot of wiping his noggin with a sweat towel, and then he refers to Marcus Burton as fat, which is news to me that Marcus Burton's nickname is fat as well. I'm keeping that theme going. I love seeing a little like a rejuvenated Shrews.
Rejuvenated Shrews is good. To you, Eric Fawcett.
I love the heavy favorites in one bid leagues looking really good to start their conference tournaments. I like these teams getting rewarded. I want to see these teams that have dominated one bid leagues regular season. I want to see them in the dance. We've seen ones go down, which means that we need these strong 16 seeds. We don't want to see the fluke from the NEC going in and getting crushed by 50. So to see Central Connecticut take care of business, they were up by 20 against Lemoyne in like no time. To see Lipscomb dominate Central Arkansas. Again, these tournaments are done. They still need to close it out, but both those teams look great. And I feel like a lot of these like big dogs in the one bid leagues are really taking care of business. That's what I want to see. I want to see these teams in the tournament.
An impassioned plea from Eric Fawcett to good basketball teams. Play good basketball when it matters. I like it. Also, I don't know if this was intentional wordplay from you or not, but after like multiple fat drops from Riley, you dropped heavy favorites. I really liked that, Fawcett. You're going to get the point here. At the end of our first segment here, 2 points Jim, 2 points Riley, 1 point Eric Fawcett, and he has control of the board. I want to remind our viewers we are brought to you by the Burner Ball Discord. It's the best place for college basketball fans to engage with other fans, get expert opinions, exclusive content from multiple members of the show that you're looking at right now. You'll hear more about this as the show goes on. Make sure you join the Burner Ball Discord so you don't miss any of it as the most exciting time of the season arrives in the next couple of weeks. Okay, for our second segment today, we're going to look ahead to conference tournament week. We're going to look at the 5 power conferences, and I'd like you each to give me the team that you think will win their conference tournament and a couple sentences on why. You can go chalk, you can give me the best team, or as we all know, it's not always chalky in conference tournament week. So give me your best explanation, please. We will start in the SEC, and we go to you, Fawcett.
I think Florida's going to win. I think Auburn is very clearly the best team in the SEC, but Auburn has signified to everyone that they don't care. They played 22 possessions of zone all season long, and then they played 20 against Texas A&M just to try something new, and they got hammered in every single possession. They didn't go like they have shown that they don't care. They're looking towards the NCAA tournament. Florida matches up super well with Alabama, as we just saw on Wednesday night. We've also seen against Tennessee that their front court can overwhelm them and they can win that matchup as well. So I like Florida against the other top two seeds. And also Florida had a win on the road against Auburn when Auburn was trying. Now I just don't think Auburn's going to be trying. So I actually think Florida runs away with this one.
Jim.
I'm going to go Tennessee. I also don't think Auburn really wants this tournament title. They've basically locked up the number one overall seed. There's not a ton of incentive for it. And I thought about Florida. My worry is that they had Micah Handluckton break his leg in this event last year, and Todd Golden's talked about, like, we're not going to go crazy. Like on John Rothstein's pod, he mentioned that. So I think maybe you get some lighter minutes loads for some of their best players, and they're okay if they lose in the semis or something. But Rick Barnes doesn't really have that gear. Tennessee is a massively intense team. I thought about Texas A&M for similar reasons. Buzz has been good in this event before too. But Tennessee's got the better draw, and they're also still kind of playing for that one seed. And I think this event matters a little more to them, whereas some of the other teams have like a little bit of a warning sign.
I just love this time of year. Like, there's obviously the big dance, right? We all love the NCAA tournament, but I love conference tournament week because you really do try and find like who wants to be here versus who doesn't. It's such a fun variation of this sport that we love. Fawcett, I was all the way in on your Florida answer, but then Jim brought the receipts from Todd Golden on the Rothstein podcast talking about resting a little bit. I like that angle. I remember that injury. It really just destroyed their NCAA tournament hopes last year. I think that's going to be hanging in the back of their mind. So I like the Florida shout. Jim, you're going to get the point. We move to my favorite conference, the Big Ten. Jim, who's your pick?
Going with Wisconsin. I don't trust really any of these teams all that much, but Wisconsin's been pretty good in this event in recent years. Remember, they beat or almost beat Purdue last year, and they've got a ton of offense this time. Tanjay's great. They've got perimeter weapons, and they're playing a little more up tempo. I think they can win in more than one way, where in the past it was only slow it down, grind it out. They've got a little bit more versatility to them. It's less about trying to find, I guess I just don't really trust Michigan or Michigan State. So this was a bit of a by default pick for me.
Riley.
I was also going to go with Wisconsin, and I got to go with my heart. I can't just argue for the sake of arguing. I'll say this. The last time the Big Ten tournament was in Indianapolis, it was 2022. The Badgers bowed out in the first round against Michigan State. That storyline is plastered in my mind with Michigan State being the favorites. Wisconsin wants to have a better showing than that. They want their revenge over the team that's been, the benchmark of friendship and chemistry and all of that this year in the Spartans. In this case, I'm rolling with the offense. I'm rolling with the up-tempo attack, the three-point bombing. I love the way this team plays, and I just think being offensive-minded, I trust that a little bit more in a conference tournament setting than when you get to the NCAA tournament when you're looking more at matchups and what happens when things break down and your shooting is off rhythm or whatever it may be.
Greg, you got to give this to him. Because I tripped and I said they almost beat Purdue last year. They did beat Purdue, so I gotta wear that.
Wow, this is a first in ball top history. Jim stepping aside. Jim, I will say the point was going to Riley, so I think you knew where this was going. But Riley, yeah, you're on the board with 3. I will just add as a Big Ten fanatic here. I think this tournament will be fun because I think a lot of the teams actually want this. I think like Illinois feels they need to prove something. I think Purdue with championship DNA kind of wants to go get one, even though they've got depth questions. Wisconsin's certainly in the mix. So if you're looking for inspired teams at the top, this could be a fun tournament with reasons to try and compete. But Riley, you get the point, my friend. The floor is yours going forward to the Big 12. Who's your pick, Riley?
I'm rocking with Houston, and I think that's in part because in order for them to lock up a one seed, make sure they are on that line, they're going to want to stack those Q1 wins. They're going to value this. And look, they're probably going to play Texas Tech. I know that's the other favorite. JT Toppin has been on an absolute heater, but my mind is going back to them watching the Red Raiders beat them on the home court. If push comes to shove and they meet up in the championship game, I like Kelvin Sampson getting a little bit of revenge. I also like the thought of Kelvin Sampson getting this win in Kansas City. I know that's technically Missouri, but a little reminder to the Jayhawks that the league doesn't run through them anymore.
Fawcett.
Yeah, Riley made a couple of my points because I like Texas Tech. JT Toppin is the hottest player in college basketball right now. He's doing his best to try to get All-American votes. He's going to be motivated. Grant McCasland is someone, new to making the jump. He cares about this tournament a lot more than someone who's been there a whole lot. And of course, Texas Tech has shown that ability to beat Houston on the road before. They've got multiple ball handlers that can kind of work with that trapping pressure that Houston wants to play. And another thing that I like for Texas Tech, their last regular season game of the year is Arizona State, so they'll get to chill a little bit there and be totally prepped for the tournament. So I really like Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think this is a tough one because Houston's clearly the best team in this league, right? They split in the regular season, and I feel dumb ever wondering if there's motivation issues from a Kelvin Sampson team right now. But Fawcett, I'm going to lean on your side here just because I haven't loved what I've seen from Houston the last couple games, and I feel like it's become apparent they're getting a one seed. They've already locked up the Big 12. How locked in on these games are they? They kind of play with their food with Kansas and Cincy. So since that last win over Texas Tech, I do feel like I've liked more than I've seen from the Red Raiders. Fawcett, you're going to get the point. We go to the Big East. Fawcett, who you got?
It's St. John's, man. It's Rick Pitino and MSG. Like I've really liked UConn and Creighton and how they've played as of late, but they're just such poor matchups for St. John's. St. John's is so disruptive with their ball pressure, so disruptive taking away off-ball screening action, and that's what off-ball screening action, that is UConn, that is Creighton. So we saw St. John's play really well against UConn recently. I think that'll be the case again, and it'll be the same case if or when they play Creighton. I think that this is just a perfect mix of St. John's team that's playing awesome. They've got the home court advantage, and they play a style that's perfectly suited to take away what the other best teams in the leagues do well. I think, yeah, this is a St. John's runaway.
Jim.
St. John's as well. It's like the consistency factor for me. Everything they do translates from a night to night basis. The one thing you're worried about with them is like, can they maintain that level of effort every single game? They're going to be in MSG in front of that crowd, incredible every single night, with Pitino infusing them with the anger and the fervor that they need to play their style. We haven't seen any consistency out of Marquette. Marquette's last time beating an NCAA tournament caliber team was January 3rd. So I am uninterested in them. UConn's not consistent enough, turns it over way too much in that matchup against St. John's, as Eric noted. And I think the athleticism has kind of overwhelmed Creighton in their two matchups. Despite the road loss, I think you take that to a neutral floor, and neutral, I say in air quotes, and St. John's will be just fine against Creighton.
Yeah, definitively the best team in conference play. Definitively our panel's pick here. Jim, I feel like to summarize your answer, it was a lot of home court, MSG. This is going to matter. Fawcett, you mentioned UConn. You gave them a quick name drop. My gut is kind of thinking Dan Hurley's going to make this interesting because, look, bad year for them. NCAA tournament, I don't think they're winning that, right? None of us do. Could they get hot and hang some banner and salvage this as champions? Maybe. But Fawcett, you're shutting me down, reminding me that St. John's has a great matchup with UConn. I like that angle to talk me out of wasting my money betting on Dan Hurley again. We're all tied up at 3. Everybody has 3 right now. One more prompt for conference tournament week. And I think we might all have the same answer here unless someone wants to get spooky. Fawcett, who wins the ACC tournament?
Yeah, like we're talking about motivation and who wants to be there. And Duke's going to be looking past this tournament. The focus won't be there. They might even be resting some players, some minute restrictions, and they're still going to win every game by double digits. I mean, this is Duke by 1,000,000 in every game. I think that they win this, and I think every game is by at least 15 points.
Riley.
sometimes you got to get a little spicy. Sometimes you got to stick your neck out for what you believe in. And I am not going to kowtow to the Duke propaganda machine. Give me the Louisville Cardinals. I know I gave love to Fat Edwards. They have literally lost one time this year. The last time they were losing multiple games, your Christmas tree was still up, Greg. You were listening to Evan Miyakawa tell you about his favorite Hallmark Christmas movies. You were watching Seth Davis live tweeting a Christmas story. That was the last time that Louisville lost multiple games. Even from like a stylistic point, I think they have enough size to where like another matchup with Duke wouldn't like be a death knell for them. And just the 3-point shooting is a great equalizer going up against that stout defense that just does not give up shots at the rim.
I was open to arguments here. I was, but Riley, the last time Duke lost multiple games, the turkey wasn't even in the oven yet. Okay, that's not the right angle to take here. Fawcett, you get the point. You just got our own ball up top version of a kill shot, by the way. 3 straight Eric Fawcett points. He goes from 2 points back to a 1-point lead heading into our weekend preview. And since you're in the lead, Fawcett, we might as well throw it to you, my friend. Let us know what's going on with the Scout Team series in the Burner Ball Discord.
Yeah, generally we've been pretty positive with our videos. We've been really like showcasing what teams do well, even if we're not sure how good they are. We have a little bit of a haters video coming out. It's essentially why we think that top seeds could be vulnerable in the NCAA tournament. You mentioned something about Houston that's going to be mentioned a little bit in the next video. So if you're a little bit of a hater of some of these top seeds, or you just want to know who might go down early, we'll be pointing out a few things that make some of these top teams vulnerable.
That's why I love you and Kevin Sweeney. I mean, I want this content before I'm filling out my bracket. Join the Burner Ball Discord to get it. Thank you, Eric Fawcett. Okay, resetting the board. 4 points Fawcett, 3 points Riley, 3 points Jim. 5 games to preview this weekend. We start with you, Fawcett. Purdue at Illinois. A rematch of last year's regular season finale. Braden Smith hit the night-night celebration, if you remember that. Illinois 2-point favorites at home per Ken Palm. Fawcett, who you got?
I think Purdue wins by 5 or 6. I think when you've got two teams that are struggling like this, you look at, okay, who's at least doing something well. When you look at Illinois, like their problems have been kind of on both sides of the ball. And when you look at Purdue, at least when their offense has struggled recently, their defense has been really disruptive and they'll be able to take Illinois out of what they can do. And Illinois is one of the worst teams in the country at turning teams over. I just don't know how you play against Braden Smith and you just let him sit back in the pocket and make every single pass he wants. So I don't like this matchup at all for Illinois. And I think that Purdue gets the win.
Jim.
There's a couple areas where I do like the matchup for Illinois. So I'm gonna go with the Illini. I think they're gonna dominate the rim. They're 14th in the country in 2-point percentage offense, and Purdue is bottom 20 in the country in 2-point percentage defense. I know their offense is more predicated on the perimeter and taking threes, but I think they can live getting a layup line against this Purdue defense. I also think Illinois is kind of finding its level after the sickness, the injuries, trending a little bit up right now. I think they can knock off a Purdue team that has some vulnerabilities. And Fletcher Loyer got a little banged up against Rutgers. They just played a terrible Rutgers defense. This is going to feel like a whole new challenge for them. If Loyer's not 100%, that tilts me even more towards Illinois.
It's an interesting game in a variety of ways because both these teams have had a bunch of ups and downs. Both these teams coming off back-to-back blowout wins for one of the first times all year. Matt Painter and Braden Smith, 3-0 against Illinois in the Braden Smith era. 5 straight wins for Painter against Underwood, against some pretty good Underwood teams. And when it comes down to the matchups, I think you're right. Both sides can exploit it. Purdue isn't going to shoot themselves in the foot against Illinois playing some drop coverage, Braden Smith. I'm worried Illinois is going to revert to Illinois bombing away from 3 instead of taking advantage of that mismatch down low. Fawcett, you're going to get the point. You're on a hot streak still, my friend. 5 points for you to the Big East. St. John's taking on Marquette. Marquette following up that heartbreaking loss that they just suffered to UConn last night. This one is a home game for Marquette. Marquette a 2-point favorite per Ken Palm. Fawcett, what you got?
And St. John's by 8. These are two teams that play kind of similarly in the sense that they both are defense first teams who offensively swing the ball side to side and just like hope for something to happen. And I just think St. John's is the team that does that style a lot better. I think that they're a lot more disruptive defensively. And I also think a big element here is the rebounding. Marquette is 251st in the country in defensive rebounding, a little bit undersized in the front court. St. John's is 10th in the country in offensive rebounding. I think in this game that's between two defensive teams that aren't super creative offensively, St. John's is the better defense, and they're going to get points and a ton of them on the offensive glass. I think this is an easy win for St. John's.
Riley.
I also like St. John's to win this one and win it big, particularly because, like Fawcett mentioned, Marquette is a defensive minded team, but that defense hasn't really been defensing recently. If you look at the numbers, the Golden Eagles, when they were at their best, they were forcing a ton of turnovers. That is almost dried up during conference play. Only forced 8 against UConn. Only turned Seton Hall over 9 times. Villanova 7 times. Looking at results earlier this month, yeah, they got Providence to turn the ball over 16. Good on you. Like Kim English teams are turning the ball over against everybody. I'm not giving you points for doing what's expected of you. I think St. John's rolls in this one.
A lot of St. John's propaganda today is making me rethink some of my Red Storm takes here. But Riley, I like that you brought some turnover numbers here. I feel like you're right. I've noticed a little bit of a difference in the pressure defense from Marquette here. So, Riley, I'm going to let you snap the Eric Fawcett hot streak here. Riley's back on the board to 4 points. Riley, over to you. Kentucky and Missouri. Big one for Jim's Tigers here. Ken Palm has Missouri as a 4-point favorite at home. Riley, what do you think?
Well, speaking of turnovers, that could be an issue for Kentucky in this one. The Mizzou defense, I wouldn't say it's great by any stretch, but one thing they can really do is turn teams over. And again, looking at the game logs for Kentucky, the last few games, they turned it over 18 times against Auburn. They turned it over 13 times against Oklahoma, 12 times against Alabama. Like they're just stacking these double-digit turnover performances. And I think it almost reminds me a little bit of how Mizzou got up for Kansas in that big spot when, Kansas had a little bit better reputation at the time 2 months ago. But they turned Kansas over a ton. And I think in front of that home crowd, that's where you see Dennis Gates unleash a little bit of havoc. They can get out and run. And I kind of like Tamar Bates as maybe the best guard in this game, at least the one who can get the most buckets. Give me Mizzou in a close one.
Jim.
I'm going to say Mizzou by 10. I really like the situation for them off 2 road losses where they kind of got paddled a little bit. Their defense really got taken to task. But Kentucky doesn't really take advantage of the areas that Mizzou is soft at, especially the defensive glass where they had major problems at Vandy. That's not a big part of Mark Pope's attack. That kind of lets Mizzou off the hook. And as Riley mentioned, the spot here, team that is not feeling very good about itself right now, Mizzou, back home in front of the fans. They've had some awesome efforts in the right situations. And Kentucky's coming off a 30-point blowout of a bad SEC team. I think maybe they could be the one feeling themselves while heading on the road. It sets up really well for a Mizzou win here.
I do wonder if Lamont Butler and Mark Pope, who gave the jersey to the Kentucky frat star, Zach Toe, is he getting his jersey taken away before this game? I'd like to know that before I place any bets. But Jim, I expect a Missouri blowout, to be honest. I think the spot screams it, as you mentioned. And you were a little more decisive in what you think the margin will be. So you get my point. Jim, back to you. Alabama and Auburn, round 2. This should be obviously a fun matchup, just like the first time. But as we spoke about in the SEC tournament preview, where exactly is Auburn mentally and where is Alabama mentally after their loss last night to Florida? 2 straight for them with Tennessee before this. Ken Palm has Auburn as a 10-point favorite at home here. Jim, what do you think?
Greg, who's Auburn's best player?
It'd be Janai Broom.
What do you do with brooms?
You sweep.
You sweep. We're getting an Auburn sweep here. I think they handle this game. The paint dominance is going to show up again. Alabama's had serious issues with that against good competition. They're 1-6, 1-5 against the other top 6 teams in the SEC. They haven't competed all that well with other teams right at the top of that league. Auburn, we talked about how much they care about the SEC tournament. Well, they care about the IBOB, the Iron Bowl of basketball. They want to sweep their arch rival. I think you can get a home run effort. Auburn got the bad game out of their system after they celebrated the outright SEC regular season title. This is going to be A+ Auburn again. I think they run Alabama out here.
Fawcett.
I think Alabama wins by 2. I think that, again, I made this point before because you never know on the show if you're going to be able to get your takes off later in this. So I really think Auburn showed everyone that they don't care. When they started to play a zone that they hadn't played since bye games, they got shellacked by Texas A&M and they just stayed in it because they didn't care. They wanted to try something new. They let Texas A&M shoot 25 threes and Texas A&M doesn't shoot many threes and Texas A&M made them, so they won. I mean, I really think Alabama, who's really fighting for that last 1 seed, who's He's got a player in Mark Sears who's had 30 points in 3 of his last 5 games. I do think the motivation is going to be there on the Alabama side a little bit more. And even if you take all the motivation out of it, I still think Alabama is a potent offensive team that shoots so many threes against an Auburn team that is giving up a lot of threes recently, that they can make those shots, that they can win a game like this. So I do like Alabama to win.
10 feels like a lot of points. That's what my gut tells me. I kind of want to give the point to Fawcett just for how unamused he was with Jim's broom pun. That was nice. But I got to be honest, listening to both arguments, the zone that they played against Texas A&M, I don't think is going to factor in here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is just a give up on the season moment. Or maybe that's just like A&M can't shoot at all. Who cares? Let's not get hurt. I'd be kind of stunned if Bruce Pearl employs that zone against his rival in the final game of the season here. So I'm going to give the point to Jim, and maybe I'll be wrong and regret this one this weekend, but I think Auburn's going to sweep this as well. All right, Duke, Carolina. I'm glad this worked out. We got everybody to talk about their teams for today's episode. That's nice. Jim, over to you. Round 2. You going with another decisive Duke victory here?
No, I think it's going to be kind of close. I think we've seen this incredible version of Duke, but they're rolling bad teams. Other than Illinois, who was banged up and sick at the time, I'm not going to just completely bow at the altar of the Blue Devils right now. And the UNC offense is rolling. Now, it is also rolling against terrible teams, like 6 straight games against teams with no chance at the tournament. But you're getting major contributions from Captain Jack, major contributions from Powell. Trimble looked really good last game. I love the trajectory that UNC's on, and they're going to be the team at home. I don't think they'll win. Duke's better, and we finally maybe see Duke execute late in a close game. But UNC is going to keep it close in what I think is going to be a shootout. Points, points, points.
Riley.
Greg, have you ever seen the movie Miracle with Kurt Russell?
I have.
You know what Herb Brooks, played by Kurt Russell, says the night before the game against the Russians?
Remind me, please.
If we played them 10 times, they might win 9. But not this game. Not tonight. Tonight we hoop with them. My heels are pulling the upset on this. Jim hit on a lot of the points. This offense has been rolling over the course of the 6-game winning streak. Look, admittedly small sample size, 4th best offense in the country. They finally started hitting some 3-point shots. Ian Jackson is shooting 60% from 3 over his last 6 games. Like, yes, that number is correct. 60% from 3. He's like 17 for 28. Again, the same logic I applied to Louisville, I'm going to apply to Carolina. If they're knocking down shots that at least can get that Duke defense spread out a little bit, you have a home court fan base that's re-energized and is like starting to believe again. I'm ready to be hurt again, but I believe in UNC.
All right. I hear a lot of belief from Riley Davis. Unfortunately, I do not believe in miracles. I'm sorry. I just don't. I'm waiting for some sort of schematic reason from you, Riley. I didn't hear one.
I gave you the 3-point numbers.
I wish you the best of luck this weekend, my friend. Maybe Jay Lucas's departure will mean good things for you after this game. But at least Jim picked the better team to win this game. So Jim's going to get the point. Oh boy, gentlemen, this one's been all over the place today. It's been a fun episode. As we head to our bonus round, Jim in the lead with 6 points, Fawcett with 5, Riley Davis with 4. Points are worth double. There's 3 prompts left, so theoretically anyone could still win this game. Before we get to the bonus round, Jim, I'll throw it over to you to give your plug for the Burner Ball Discord.
Get in there, folks. Get in there right now. There's a Trilly Donovan spoiler on a potential or a certain firing in the mid-major worlds. You get this news first if you're in the Discord. So there's one little nugget for folks. But also, 3-Man Weave's in there every single day talking betting. We have had some people showing great futures receipts from regular season conference betting, winning some titles, people making money there. It's a sharp group. And now we're looking at all the conference tournaments odds right now. You've got a big week of them next week. People have already been cutting down some of the numbers that get released by the books. It's a great space if you have any interest in the betting angle, just either game by game or conference tournament futures. People are giving good insight, and we're getting value. At the very least, that's what we can ask for, Greg, value, and hope the results follow after that. So, yeah, it's a great space to join.
I like value. I like making money. March is a good time to do it. Join the Burner Ball Discord. Okay, to the bonus round. As I mentioned, points are worth double. All 3 of our contestants are in the game for all 3 of these prompts, and I don't think we're going to have to eliminate anyone today, theoretically, before the third prompt, but I'll let you guys know if we get there. Jim, you have control of the board, and this is a prompt that's inspired by you. You wrote a nice article on this for The Athletic. Everybody go read that. But who is the best NCAA tournament champion in the history of college basketball?
Well, if we're going all the way back into history, I mean, maybe you could dig up some teams, but I think basketball is more modern now. So I'm going to go with a recent example. In fact, the team that topped my list in the Athletic, 2024 UConn, their dominance was unparalleled in the NCAA tournament, in the 64 team era, the highest total winning margin of anybody that's won the tournament. They won the Big East regular season, the Big East tournament title, only lost 3 games all year. They had multiple lottery picks. The talent was clearly there. They were the second year of a back-to-back champion. I'm going with UConn, even if it is the recent example.
Fawcett.
To me, kind of like the LeBron Jordan debate, you're often debating kind of eras as opposed to even just players. So I kind of feel like in kind of an era debate, I think that the best era of college basketball was like 2005 to 2010, where you had NBA first round like lottery picks that would come back to school to like work on their game. So when I look at Florida in 2007 winning the second of their back-to-back national championship, to bring back Joakim Noah and Al Horford, to bring back Corey Brewer, like that is incredible. And I think when you look at their body of work and the teams that they beat to win that championship, like if you look at UCLA with Aaron Aflalo and Darren Collison and Russell Westbrook and Luke Mbamute, and you look at Ohio State with Greg Oden and Daquan Cook and Mike Conley, like if either of those teams won the championship, you'd look at them as like one of the stronger national champions of all time. And they didn't win because Florida beat them both. So I think that Florida won 2 championships in what was maybe the hardest era of college basketball to win them. So I think, yes, their returning team with all that experience was the best team. And I would put them up against any of these modern teams if you could, use the old time machine.
Riley.
I'm going with 2018 Villanova. This was a team that won every tournament game by double digits, finished as the best offense that year per KenPom, had 2 players in the top 7 of Player of the Year voting with Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges. And if you look at their basketball reference page, there's a lot of dudes with little NBA logos next to it, whether it's Brunson, Bridges, DiVincenzo, Amari Spellman, Eric Paschal. They had a cup of coffee in the league. Phil Booth scored 20 points in a national championship game once upon a time. He doesn't even get like the NBA logo. And guess what, Greg? I got a little shameless pandering to you. This team is so great that you as a Michigan fan can always say, oh man, if we didn't run into the best champ of all time, we'd have got us one under Beeline.
Okay, it was shameless pandering, but it worked. I'm not gonna lie, it did. Yeah, gentlemen, 3 really good answers. 3 teams that were composed of 2-time champions, right? And the one thing that may separate them a little bit that I actually really liked about that Villanova team was that it was Jalen Brunson who had already won one, coming off of a year where he didn't win one, coming out to get back where he rightfully belonged. UConn with a 2-peat, Florida with a 2-peat, of course, very special teams, but so much NBA talent, kind of the best of both worlds. You merged Fawcett's argument with, I think, Jim's argument of dominance. And Riley, you get the 2 points. I like that answer. Riley, you're up to 6. You've tied our lead with Jim. Fawcett, you are 1 back with 5 right now. Truly anybody's game. It's a fun one, boys. This Duke team is dominant. Jay Lucas just left Duke for Miami. Miami's been horrible all season, as we all know. Hypothetically, if this Miami team played this Duke team on a neutral floor, but Miami got to play with 6 players and Jay Lucas coaching versus Duke with just 5 players on the floor, what would the score of that game be? Riley, to you first.
Yeah, Duke skull drags them like 100-70. It doesn't matter if they have an extra player because this Miami team does not pass. To borrow a phrase from Jim that I know he likes to use, Miami does not play real basketball. They have so many guys who just want the ball in their hands and want to hoist up terrible shots, whether it's Jaleel Bethea, who I still believe in, by the way. Still love you, Jaleel. Just free my guy. Or Matthew Cleveland. Like, those guys all play the same way. It would not matter. Duke still runs them off the court.
Let's go back to Fawcett.
So Miami is dead last in the country in points per possession defensively, not adjusted, but just like raw. So they're dead last. So if you gave them another player defensively, they improve 180 spots. Is that fair to say? So they're still like just okay defensively. So I think they're giving up a ton still with 6 players on the court defensively. But I actually think Miami's been pretty good offensively this year, and their numbers kind of behind the scenes are actually really good. It's just that they're always taking the ball out of their hoops, so they can't make anything happen. They never score in transition because they're always getting scored on. So I do think that their offense is already actually pretty good, and if they could just have someone cherry pick at all times, standing under the other teams. I'm like, I do think that this, like, well, I'd love to be like, oh yeah, like Duke would still win. Like Miami would win with 6 players. Like, let's be real here. But I legitimately think Duke is legitimately putting up a ton of points on them. So I think it's 120 for Miami and 102 for Duke.
Great reasoning there to Jim.
I earnestly think Duke would win. Maybe that's insane, but Fawcett's saying like that's ridiculous. If they're having a guy cherry pick, then they have the worst defense in the country. Like they're not having 6 on defense. So I think Duke's quality over the quantity of Miami is just way too beneficial for Duke. Cooper Flagg is a basketball savant. He'd solve 6 players within, the first 25 minutes of basketball. In the final 15, they'd be okay. And Riley mentioned it with the way Miami plays offense. If you're playing my turn, your turn, adding a 6th guy to that mix isn't going to help you that much. It's just more bad jumpers and more guys fighting over the ball. I think Miami's too much of a mess. I actually believe Duke would win.
Okay, I love this prompt, and we got very different answers. I appreciate that we actually got into some schematics here. Like, oh yeah, just cherry pick versus what happens if we cherry pick.
Do the trap every time, yeah.
I have no idea what my answer was. The compelling argument that I think I was swayed by here was Jim's point that if they do cherry pick, Duke's going to score every time anyway. I think that's true. And then you think, what would Miami even do on the offensive end? I think a 6th guy may just get in the way of a mess of, I mean, it's an offense that has been pretty good, like you said, Fawcett, but they can't run their stuff if there's a 6th guy on the court. So, Jim, it sounds crazy. I liked your reasoning the best. You're going to get the 2 points, and you're back in the lead here. Jim with 7, Riley with 6, Fawcett with 5. If Fawcett gets this last point, we will go to a tiebreaker head-to-head between Jim and Fawcett. Final question. This is one I asked back in December, I think. Who would you take to win the NCAA tournament? Every SEC team or the field? Jim, you go first.
I'm going with the SEC. There's 4 teams there that I think are really great candidates. Right in the 1 seed mix, you have the best team in the country, Auburn, or at least the best resume in the country. You can quibble over Ken Palm ranking there with Duke. But outside of that, the teams that really actually concern me, Duke, Houston, maybe Texas Tech. I'm not worried about the Big Ten. And the SEC, you also get the bonus of a Texas A&M or a Mizzou making a crazy run, or even a Chris Beard run to the Final Four. So with the top heaviness of, 4 of the top 6 teams in the country right now are the SEC, plus some of the bonus you get down the line there, and just my general discrediting of the Big Ten and others, I'll take the SEC.
Let's go back to Fawcett again.
If you had set the over under for Sweet 16 teams as 8 in the SEC, I'm going over. If you said the over under is 4.5 SEC teams in the Elite 8, I'm going over. If you set the over under at 2.5 SEC teams in the Final Four, I'm going over. And if you set the over under at teams in the National Championship at 1.5, I'm going over. I think the SEC is absolutely rolling what will be the SEC Invitational. I mean, I could get into the teams that I like, just like Jim, but I just, even when I like reverse engineer what it would take to get to that point, it's SEC all the way for the reasons I laid out from the Sweet 16 on.
Riley fighting through a huge sneeze here. Let's see what he can do.
I'll take the field, and that is one reason alone. After my UNC Tar Heels beat Duke this weekend, we may win the battle, we will lose the war. I've said all year, God gives his hardest battles to his toughest soldiers. This is my Hercules year. My team stinks. My biggest arch rivals went cutting down the nets. So if I get the field, I get Duke, and I'll sprinkle a little Houston on that too, just to see if maybe this is the year where Kelvin Sampson gets over the hump. I like those odds.
It was a passionate defense from Fawcett on how dominant the SEC is. A little Big Ten slander from Jim. Guys, the second best team since 1999, according to KenPom, is not in the SEC. It can't be that easy, can it? I know they're good. I know there's more shots, but there's only one team that's going to cut down the nets. And analytically, the team most likely to cut down the nets is the Duke Blue Devils. That's not an SEC team. Riley, you got biblical on us for a second there, but You've won the show today. You just gave credit to your rival after picking an upset against them 10 minutes ago. The floor is yours, my friend, to say whatever you'd like.
In the words of Kevin Malone, it's just nice to win one.
Just needed a little morale boost there before Duke UNC this weekend. All right. Thank you to everybody for watching the show. We've got one more week left of Ball Up Top. We'll be back with 2 more episodes next week. Thanks to Jim, Fawcett, and Riley. We'll see you then.